وتحمي الوطن.
Good afternoon on this Tuesday, May 27th. I'm Yumna Naufal. These are today's headlines. The vacuum in the presidency spills over into Parliament, which once again fails to approve a controversial wage hike draft law. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons denies a report by the Syrian Foreign Ministry that a team is in Syria kidnapped. Low turnout as polls open for the second and final day of the Egyptian presidential election. The vacuum in the presidency spilled over into Parliament, which once again failed to approve a controversial wage hike draft law, angering civil servants and mainly teachers who vowed to go ahead with their plan to boycott the official exams. A legislative session that had been postponed was adjourned by Speaker Nabih Berri to June 10th over lack of quorum caused by the boycott of the majority of Christian lawmakers. Lebanese Forces MP Georges Adouane said during a press conference in Parliament that legislation amid a vacancy at the presidential palace is not permissible. He laid the blame of the vacuum on the MPs who boycotted the session that were aimed at electing the president. The March 14 Alliance supports social demands. His rival from the Change and Reform Bloc MP Ibrahim Kanaan, also a Christian, called for the consensus on the rights of civil servants within the limits of the state's capabilities. Interior Minister Nuhad Mashnou lashed out at the resistance, saying that the arms of Hezbollah should be removed from the country's political equation. He said, "I believe that we surpassed the period of resistance. It has become now a regional power that even the Lebanese don't have the decision whether or not to use it." He talked to an interview in the Saudi Al Watan newspaper. He pointed out that the dispute over the arms of the resistance requires a wide political consensus, which isn't available yet. And he explained that the strategic arsenal should be used to confront Israel, while the regional arsenal is linked to Iran. Asked if the security plans implemented in the northern city of Tripoli and the Bekaa Valley could be enforced in other regions, he ruled out such a move and pointed out that security will be implemented also in Beirut's southern suburbs according to agreements with different factions and not through a simple plan. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri attended a reception ceremony hosted by Saudi King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz in Casablanca, Morocco. This is according to a statement from Hariri's press office. The statement said the reception was held at the Saudi King's Casablanca residence to honor Moroccan King Mohammed VI. It added the ceremony was attended by senior Saudi and Moroccan officials. Jordan is downplaying the expulsion of Syria's ambassador to Amman, Bahjat Salman, saying relations with Damascus will not be severed and its embassy will remain open. The government's decision to consider Bahjat Salman's persona non grata and ask him to leave within 24 hours over his insults to Jordan does not at all mean that Jordan-Syrian ties will be severed. Information Minister Mohammed Momani told the government-owned Rai Daily. Now, Jordan's foreign ministry on Monday ordered Salman to leave after his repeated insults to Jordan and its leadership, institutions and citizens through his meetings, writings and social media websites. Syria quickly reacted to Jordan's move by announcing that it was expelling the Jordanian chargé d'affaires. On his Facebook page, Salman accused the Jordanian government of harassment. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons denied a report by the Syrian Foreign Ministry that its team in Syria was kidnapped. The Foreign Ministry said earlier that 6 international chemical weapons watchdog investigators have been kidnapped with their Syrian drivers on a fact-finding mission in the central province of Hama. The team have been investigating allegations that Syrian government forces unleashed the industrial chemical on a rebel-held village in Hama province last month. The ministry said the team went missing as they were traveling in 2 vehicles from government-held Tibit al-Imam to rebel-held Kafr Zita, the scene of the alleged attack. The watchdog said late last month that it would deploy a fact-finding mission to probe the allegation that Damascus had used chlorine as a weapon in breach of its commitments under the Chemical Weapons Convention. Egypt is wrapping up the second and final day of presidential elections with fears of a low turnout, as former Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is expected to emerge as the country's next president. As polls open for the second and final day of voting, authorities announced that they are declaring a public holiday and extending polling hours to encourage voters to turn out. Miram Hunani has the latest in this report.
Egyptians line up to vote on the second and final day of the presidential election, where nearly 54 million Egyptians are eligible to vote for one of the two candidates, former army chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and leftist politician Hamdin Sabahi. Although former military chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is posed for an almost certain victory, fears of a low turnout threaten to cloud the expected victory for the former military chief. Al-Sisi was hoping for a large turnout to send a message to the West that his removal of former President Mohamed Morsi nearly a year ago was not a coup, but a popular revolution like the 2011 uprising that ended autocrat Hosni Mubarak's rule. His only rival in the race is left-wing politician Hamdin Sabahi, who finished third in the 2012 presidential vote, but is not believed capable of taking more than a symbolic amount of votes. Senior residents were the first to appear at poll stations dominating the lines in the first day of elections, and around 500,000 security personnel ensured the election took place smoothly, where measures were even tighter at the polling station when presidential candidate Sisi came to vote. At many polling stations, female voters turned out in much higher numbers than men and appeared very enthusiastic about casting their votes. After ousting Morsi last year, Sisi had been a target for assassination, forcing him to campaign only through television broadcasts. Egyptians hope the new president will help restore security and stability in the turmoil-stricken country that saw the ouster of two presidents in 3 years. Meanwhile, lawyers in Egypt are eager for new regulations to be put in place by whoever wins the election. The balloting is being supervised by monitors from the European Union, the African Union, and the Arab League, and the official results for the new Egyptian president is scheduled to come out on June the 5th.
Coming up next, musician Pharrell Williams premieres his Girl exhibition in Paris. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Future TV. Iraq's government is dropping barrel bombs and may also be targeting a hospital in its battle with militants in the conflict-hit city of Fallujah, according to Human Rights Watch. The Iraqi authorities denied the claims, which come with Baghdad locked in a month-long standoff with anti-government fighters in Fallujah amid a protracted surge in nationwide bloodshed, all of which is fueling fears the country is slipping back into the all-out conflict of 2006 and 2007. The New York-based rights watchdog also said abuses committed by the powerful Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant jihadist group among the main militant organizations in Fallujah likely amounted to crimes against humanity. The crisis in the desert province of Anbar, which borders Syria, erupted in late December when security forces dismantled the long-standing protest camp maintained by the province's mainly Sunni Arab population to vent the grievances against the government. The leader of the protesters occupying Libyan oil ports says that he did not recognize Prime Minister Ahmed Maitik's new government and suggests a previously agreed deal to end his blockade that could be possibly in jeopardy. Ibrahim Jatran, who wants more autonomy from Tripoli for his eastern region in Libya, had agreed with Maitik's predecessor to steadily end the protests which have cut the OPEC members' country's oil exports after the ports fell under his control last summer. Jatran's statement added to the opposition to Maitik, a businessman backed by the Muslim Brotherhood who was appointed 2 weeks ago in a chaotic parliamentary vote that prompted anti-Islamist faction to challenge its legitimacy. Libya's parliament, the General National Congress, has been paralyzed by infighting among pro- and anti-Islamist tribal and regional factions vying for influence in the chaos that followed the 2011 uprising against Muammar Gaddafi. Nigeria's military has located the nearly 300 schoolgirls abducted by Boko Haram almost 7 weeks ago now. This is according to the country's chief of defense. Air Chief Marshal Alex Bade, Nigeria's chief of defense, said that any potential armed rescue operation was fraught with danger as the 223 girls still held hostage could be caught in the crossfire. Boko Haram fighters kidnapped 276 girls from the remote northeastern town of Chibok on April 14, leading to global outrage. Nigeria's government and military have been sharply criticized for the slow response to the mass abduction and were finally forced to accept foreign help in the rescue efforts. U.S. drones have been surveying northeast Nigeria and neighboring Chad from the air, while British, French, and Israeli teams have been on the ground providing specialist assistance. The bodies of at least 30 pro-Russian rebels have been brought to a hospital in the eastern Ukrainian city of Donetsk following a day of heavy fighting in which the government forces used combat jets and helicopter gunships. Alexander Lukyachenko, mayor of Donetsk, said later that total number of the dead reached at least 40, including 2 civilian casualties. But he was not sure how many of the rest were rebels. On Monday, the army separatists seized the international airport in rebel-held Donetsk city, prompting a closure. Later in the day, they were repelled by Ukraine's security forces that launched an airstrike against the rebels. Sustained intensive gunfire was witnessed throughout the day and into the night by locals and international media. Plumes of black smoke rose in the air, and the city mayor went on television advising residents to stay at home. Monday's battle comes just as Petro Poroshenko claimed victory in Sunday's presidential votes. And still on the Malaysian government and the Malaysian flight that disappeared on March 8, well, the government released 45 pages of raw satellite data it used to determine that the missing jetliner crashed into the southern Indian Ocean, responding to demands for greater transparency by relatives of some of the 239 people on board. But at least one independent expert said his initial impression was that the communication logs didn't include key assumptions, algorithms, and metadata needed to validate the investigation team's conclusion that the plane flew south after dropping off radar screens 90 minutes into the flight. Several family members have been highly critical of the Malaysian government's response, accusing them of failing to release timely information or even concealing it. The government, which is in the early days did release contradictory information about the plane's movements, insists it is being transparent in what has been an unprecedented situation. Musician Pharrell Williams premiered his Girl exhibition in Paris, showcasing over 40 works by mostly female artists, including Marina Abramovic, Sophie Calle, Cindy Sherman, and Tracy Emin. The exhibition will open at Emmanuel Perrotin's new space in Paris, the Salle de Bal, today. The works pay homage to women who Pharrell says last album and new unisex fragrance are also called Girl. When he was talking to the press ahead of the exhibition, 41-year-old commented on the recent arrest of 6 young people in Iran who posted a video online of themselves dancing to his hit song Happy. The song has sparked similar videos all over the world, with people dancing down streets and smiling in choreographed crowds. But in Iran, laws ban women from dancing in public or appearing outside without the hijab or headscarf. Williams explained why he chose Paris for the exhibition.
Just like my album, what I tried to do was, offer many different facets of my appreciation for women, and that's what this exhibition does. This exhibition, it houses many different perspectives and many different facets, and the expression of what we feel about women. I have the utmost respect for people's religious views, so I have to say that first and foremost. But at the same time, I'm a universalist, and I think that everybody should be able to express their happiness and their celebration of the gift of now, of the present. The present is a gift, and if you just want to celebrate, your happiness, you should be allowed to do that. And so I tweeted back that, they should be freed, and I think most of them were detained for a longer period of time, and then they eventually let them all go. So we were happy to hear about that. But for me, I was sad by it, because I was like, man, they're just dancing. But at the same time, I don't live in that country. I don't know the laws. But I, in my heart of all hearts, just thought they were dancing, and they should be able to express their happiness. I don't know, France has always been good to me and our music. The Neptunes and NERD, they've always been good to us. The radio stations here, and our records have gone #1 here first a lot, before anywhere else. It's either here or Holland, and you feel it when you go to the shows, or when you go to the festivals, you feel it here, and they've just always been so good to me, so why not come back? I love France. What am I looking for? I think when I find it, that's when my life will be over. So I'm always going to be looking. I think curiosity is, it's what keeps us going as people. When you're no longer curious, you're no longer living.
So stay curious. And on that note, we end our bulletin. Here are our top stories of the day. The vacuum in the presidency spills over into Parliament, which once again fails to approve the controversial wage hike draft law. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons denies a report by the Syrian Foreign Ministry that its team in Syria is kidnapped. And low turnout as polls open for the second and final day of the Egyptian presidential elections. Your Tuesday headlines live on Future TV in Beirut. I'm Yumna Naufal, wishing you a very good night.
المقاومة في لبنان تحمي